There's a common occurrence pretty much anytime we upload a video. We get a couple of boo birds, I think, each time in the comments, or maybe they even send us a message saying that Val and I are single-handedly responsible for destroying the Sunshine Coast as it is known, and that our videos are causing property prices and rents to double and triple in some cases. And on one hand, it's honestly a little bit flattering to think that people think we have that kind of influence. But the truth of it is that these growing pains, this housing crisis that we're going through on the Sunshine Coast is not unique to the Sunshine Coast. It's happening all over Canada when you're looking around out to the Maritimes and all across BC as well. We had followed a thread on Twitter about, of all things, interprovincial migration in Canada. And we thought there was some pretty interesting information in it that maybe adds some additional context to what we're going through here on the coast and kind of across BC in general. Trevor Toomby, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's an economics professor at the University of Calgary, and he was sharing some data about interprovincial migration in Canada, specifically about Q2 of this year, where Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario each saw substantial outflows of population.
So outflow of population, people still came into the province, but more people left out of those provinces than did come in.
That's right. If you took all the people that moved in and all the people that left, and you subtracted one group for the other, more people left those 4 provinces than came into those 4 provinces. So at the end of the quarter, Ontario had fewer people than it started with, and Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba. So combined, those 4 provinces showed a net loss of 24,000 people between April, May, and June. And when those people leave, they all have to go somewhere. And the preferred destination was far and away BC, with over 15,000 net new residents in the province during that same time period. The Alberta Treasury Branch at the same time posts regular updates about Alberta's economy, and talking about similar data points that were on Twitter. ATB said that on a net basis, Alberta lost nearly 7,000 people in the second quarter just to BC. When you look at the graphs from Twitter and from ATB, you can see that far and away Alberta and Ontario were the biggest losers. BC got a big chunk, but then the Maritimes got nailed too. The number isn't as dramatic in the Maritimes, but you're talking far fewer people.
Yeah.
So when we take on 15,000 in a province of, roughly 5 million, Nova Scotia takes on like 4,000 people in a province of, however many hundreds of thousands. That's a huge change in their population. So they're going through something similar, if not probably worse than to what we're seeing here in BC right now.
Yeah. I know, just personally, I've had that experience with friends that I've known in Alberta that have moved. Some have moved to BC, so exactly like this is talking about, and some have moved back to the Maritimes and moving back to see family and move with family because their job is non-existent in Alberta, so why stay in Alberta? Yeah,
like for a long time in Alberta, the demographics were that people from every place that wasn't Alberta moved to the province for work. And you went to Fort McMurray, you worked in the oil patch, or maybe you worked in an industry that supported the oil patch. Those jobs now are just kind of slowing down. And the same to a degree in Ontario. For decades and decades, that was a big manufacturing hub for Canada. But as more stuff comes from Mexico or China, a lot of those manufacturing jobs are going away. And I think that we're kind of going to see less of these jobs, these high-paying jobs in Alberta and Ontario. And if you are not getting paid $8,000 or $10,000 a month to live in Fort McMurray, why would you live there? And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of angry comments from Fort McMurray about that. You had people that grew up on the coast or they grew up in the Maritimes and they thought, okay, I'd like to be here, but there just isn't the opportunity. They go off to Alberta and, live their life in Alberta. But now that those jobs are slowing down, I just want to go back to where my friends and family and the way of life that I know and recognize are. And I think that this is pointing this out.
And then this same other graph here, because in 2014, if you were a population between 20 and 50 years old, you were moving to Alberta. You were in the workforce and you're going. So that was 2014. And then in 2021, that same age group from 25 to 55, 60, now you're moving out of Alberta. So you're either not finding work, you're no longer in the workforce, or you're just needing to, move provinces because you're just not happy with what's in Alberta.
Well, that's where we were at. Because there's lots to, it sounds like we're really crapping on Alberta, but there's a lot to like about Alberta. We
haven't started yet.
But there's a lot to like about Alberta. Yeah. I wasn't hard done by at all in Alberta.
Yeah.
But there's lots to not like in Alberta.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's going to get worse in Alberta. And if it gets worse in Alberta, that means it gets a different kind of worse in BC. The more people that leave Alberta for lack of opportunity come to BC for more opportunity or a better way of life.
So
and that
growing pains for BC.
That's right. Where you see an economy slowing down in Alberta to a critical stage, in the next 10 or 15 years, I can see that it starts to overheat in BC in the next 10 to 15 years as we, accept that there's this big demographic shift.
Well, okay, so the big contributing factors was obviously COVID just accelerated this. Like the working industry, like the oil patch had slowed down in Alberta however many years ago. And so then that has never really come back, and people kind of stuck around. They're like, okay, it's going to turn around. It's going to turn around. Well, no. And so then there's people leaving because of that, because of employment. And then COVID, yeah. I mean, if you were working in Alberta, a lot of people always thought I'll retire to BC. And you're just kind of doing it earlier. You're like, well, I'm not going to wait till retirement now. I'm going to do it sooner. Or
you're looking around at the environment that you're moving back to, that you thought, okay, I'll stay in Alberta for another 10 or 15 years. Then I'll retire to the island. I'll retire to the Okanagan. And then COVID hits and housing prices go through the roof. And all of a sudden you start doing the arithmetic and you're like, if I work for another 10 years, the market in those places is appreciating quicker than I earn. So I'm better off to leave where I'm at, go to where I want to be, and earn less money than I am now. Because if I wait 10 years, I'm never going to get into that market.
So that is very insightful, the people that are noticing that, because some have already missed the boat on retirement, that they are retired now and decide to retire in Alberta because of the prices went up too much already on the coast in Vancouver Island, and they had plans to move to Vancouver Island and be by grandkids, but now they're like, wow, we're going to be upsizing in our retirement instead of downsizing. So then they decide to stay in Alberta. There is a bit of that that I've heard from friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to get worse in Alberta and Ontario. Alberta doesn't want to hear it, but I think you're kind of on the downward slide with oil and gas. I think that there will be a use for oil and gas for many decades to come, but I do not think it is going to be the end all be all like it has been for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I also think sometimes that the oil patch in Alberta gets painted with an overly broad brush. It's not all economically feasible oil to dig out of the ground. You've got some wells that produce well and you have good product that comes out, but then you've got something like the oil sands where there's a lot of effort that has to go into cleaning up that oil. And what you use it for, you're either limited to it or you just have to do a lot of upgrading to turn it into something usable. So it just is expensive. As the demand for oil in the next 5, 10, 15 years starts to drop off, that whole industry in Fort McMurray is the first one that's going to go by the wayside.
That's the least desirable oil.
It's the least desirable. It's the most limited to what you can do with it, and it's the most expensive to extract. Yeah. And it's the most carbon intensive to burn. Shell was a big one that pulled out of there, 5, 6, 7 years ago. You're looking at a lot of these bigger companies pulling out of there, that they're redeploying that capital either someplace that it's easier to extract oil, or they're just completely shifting gears into something green and sustainable. And Alberta, for whatever reason, it's easy to dump on Jason Kenney right now because, he looks like a little putz over there right now. But Rachel Notley, who I quite like, she, I think, missed the ball on this too, that there is still big bets going on with traditional oil and gas that I do not think is going to be there in 15 years. Well, and even our fearless leader, Justin, bought a big pipeline that I don't know what the value is going to be 15 or 20 years from now.
Yeah, I was disappointed going back to Rachel Notley while she was a premier in Alberta. She had the chance to kind of turn the province around a little bit more and to just kind of decouple from oil and gas and say, let's reinvent our workers. Let's get into renewable energy. And she had the opportunity, but she did not do a shift like I had expected she would.
When we talk about things that different provinces have, obviously you think of natural beauty in British Columbia. There's the ocean, the mountains, nice weather in the southern part of the province. In Alberta, lots of pretty places in Alberta, Jasper and Banff and those kinds of things. But I think it is such a huge labor resource. There are so many people there that just want to work.
You work. Yeah, you're there, you work, and you'll retire and have fun later. But it's all about working and grinding right now. And
so when you go and you think, I'm going to change an industry, I'm going to change the direction that the province goes, if you kind of ignore it and you let what's happening now happen, those industrious people leave and go back to where they came from, or they find greener pastures to go to. But right now, if a province said, okay, in the next 10 years, we're kind of going to chart a new course and we're not going to stop oil and gas, we're going to continue to benefit from those assets, but we're also going to really double down on solar and wind and nuclear and all these other green energies. You've got the worker base right now that if you show them how to do it, they will go to work for you and they will work like long days, long hours to make it happen.
Instead of leaving the provinces.
Yeah, where BC will benefit from it, where the Maritimes will benefit from it, that you'll have these hardworking, industrious people. Not that we don't have those here, but the people that are coming are disproportionately work like dogs.
Yeah. So when people leave Alberta, then where are they going in BC? Kind of a little bit all over. And I would think a lot the Okanagan and the Island are kind of the two main ones. Smaller centers like Nelson, I guess.
Yeah, like there was not really any data on that with specific that people from this location in Alberta were moving to that location in BC. But anecdotally, we hear about people in Calgary moving to the Okanagan, that's nice and relatively close for them.
I've had two family friends move from northern Alberta to the island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lots of people from Edmonton that dream about living on the island.
Yeah.
That's really something that they want to work towards. And so just anecdotally, I would assume that you've got a lot of Albertans going from Alberta to the Okanagan and Vancouver Island.
And just an example, because the Maritimes, they're puffing up too with a lot of people moving out there. So then I've had friends from Edmonton that have moved back to the Maritimes to visit family and to move back next to family, because if they're not working in Alberta, they may as well go back to being close to family. I'm kind of excited for those people. When I lived in Edmonton, I knew a lot of friends from the Maritimes that have moved from the Maritimes for work in Alberta. The husband worked in the oil patch, and then the wife worked with me as a pharmacy technician. And they built a life in Alberta, but now a couple of them have moved back because they miss the Maritimes. They always spoke fondly of it, and I liked hearing those stories. The one thing I do have to say, maybe this is a bit of jump around, but one thing I do have to say about people leaving Alberta, which was very disappointing because we still have family back there, is the doctors and the whole thing, what the province has done to healthcare.
If we had a week, we couldn't do enough videos about what is not good about living in Alberta right now. Yeah. Wonderful province, filled with wonderful people, but they are being mismanaged to death by an idiot. That's a lot of talk of Alberta and why people would want to leave. And generally, you can kind of just look around and see why people would want to come here. What does that, I guess, long-term mean for the Sunshine Coast and other desirable locations? I'm assuming that this means that this is not a blip, that we're not going to go for it through a year or 2 years of housing prices, and then everything will return to levels of 2018 or 2019. I would think this will be a sustained thing, and I'm sure there will be ups and downs and ebbs and flows in the market.
Yeah.
But that when you look 10 years out from now, it is going to be climbing up still, I would assume.
Yeah, I think, there might be some leveling off because it was just a crazy increase there for a year and a half. So there's got to be some kind of leveling off or a little bit of dipping. But generally, you are going to continue increasing for sure. The desirability of being out in BC and by the coast is up there.
So I think that means a lot of our communities, then we're going to start to see either people that are from these areas originally moving back, or you're just going to see new people coming in from other provinces, and that these are going to be, I think, really disproportionately motivated, hardworking, industrious people that come back. Some I'm sure will retire and take it easy, but then I think others will come and they'll enjoy living by the ocean or by the mountains for months or years. And then all of a sudden, I think that switch will flip in their head and they'll be looking for something to do. Again, if it's Alberta's loss that they're not turning their economy to face a different direction, then all of a sudden, then you're going to start to see people with money that they've brought back with them and ideas and an industrious attitude come back, that we might start to see big booms in these places that are seeing Albertans move to them.
There's a lot of hard workers in Alberta. Yeah, I think that's exactly what you're saying. And if they're moving out here, there is a lot of opportunity for them to work out here, to be in construction, because we are booming. Comment below why you've moved. Maybe you've moved during COVID and during the last few years. And where have you moved to? Have you moved from Alberta to another province? Have you moved from BC out of BC? Yeah, we'd love to hear it. So put a comment below on what you've done for a move in the last couple of years, if you have.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.